When Danielle emailed me to say I wasn't invited to her wedding, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, but not in the way you'd expect. The sound of the email alert pinging on my phone was almost cruel in its normalcy. That little ding, so familiar and routine, like the ticking of a clock in a quiet room. I sat at the kitchen table, the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the warmth of the morning sun filtering through the curtains. My hands, still trembling from the shock, hovered over the screen as I read the words again. Mom, please don't come to the wedding. You can watch it via live stream. There it was, a clean, cold disinvitation wrapped in digital politeness. No explanation, no apology. Just a link and a gentle request to be excluded from the most important day of my daughter Danielle's life. I stared at the screen long after I should have, feeling a quiet fracture inside me that no amount of motherly love could glue back together. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. For as long as I could remember, I'd lived quietly in the background of Danielle and Michael's lives, a woman who sacrificed without question. Late nights spent sewing costumes for school plays, waking up early to pack lunches, working 2 jobs so my children wouldn't want for anything. I was the steady presence, the calm center in their chaotic worlds. I wasn't flashy. I didn't demand attention, but my love was fierce and unwavering. Even when it came to Danielle's wedding, I'd given what I could, nearly $30,000 already, and promised another $50,000 for the big day. Money I scrimped and saved, sometimes missing meals or putting aside my own needs, because seeing her happy was worth every penny. Yet, here I was, being told I wasn't wanted, like I was an outsider to my own family. My home felt emptier somehow in that moment. The walls, once lined with photos of birthday parties and school graduations, seemed to close in. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual, a reminder that time was moving forward without me and Danielle's future. I took a slow breath, grounding myself in the familiar textures, the smooth wood of the table, the warm ceramic of my coffee mug. My fingers traced the rim, steadying the tremor in my chest. This was not about hurt feelings. This was about boundaries, ones I hadn't dared to set before, but now realized I must. I opened my banking app with deliberate calm and canceled the scheduled $50,000 transfer. No emotion, no tears. Just a quiet, deliberate act. The fallout was immediate. Danielle's voice on the phone was frantic, tight with panic and disbelief. Mom, what are you doing? You promised. Christopher's family is furious. They think you're being unreasonable. I could hear Christopher's mother in the background, her voice sharp, slicing through the line like ice. We valued your generosity, Helen. We didn't expect you to pull out now. But it wasn't generosity they wanted from me. It was control. A trophy presence to show off, a cash cow to fund their extravagance. I stayed silent for a moment before replying, my voice calm but firm. I'm not a bank account, Danielle. And I'm certainly not a transaction. Michael called me that evening. His voice was softer, laden with the weight of disappointment and confusion. Mom, why are you doing this? Can't we just fix it? Family is family. I wanted to tell him everything, how love that demands payment isn't love at all. How I had spent years building a house only to find it wasn't a home for me. But I simply said, sometimes, Michael, the hardest love is the one where you walk away to save yourself. The next day, Zoe, Danielle's closest friend, came by. I hadn't expected her. Her face was drawn, like she carried the weight of the whole family's guilt. We sat in the quiet kitchen, sunlight pooling around us like a fragile shield. I'm sorry, Helen, Zoe said, her voice almost a whisper. I think Danielle didn't realize what she was doing, but they saw you as a checkbook, not a mother. I nodded slowly, feeling the truth settle in my bones. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about being seen. For the first time in years, I realized I was free. That day, I began to understand that my love didn't have to come with conditions or come at the cost of my dignity. I would rebuild, not with promises or money, but with boundaries and quiet strength. A new life was waiting, one where I mattered for who I was, not what I could give. The days before Danielle's email felt like any other. I didn't notice anything amiss, not at first. Mornings were still filled with the usual bustle. Michael rushing to get out the door for work, Danielle texting from the other room about last-minute wedding plans, the hum of the dishwasher in the background, the scent of vanilla-scented candles, and the faint tang of citrus cleaner lingered in the air, subtle reminders of the care I put into keeping the house feeling like a home. Danielle and I had always been close in our own way. Not the kind of relationship that needed constant check-ins, but one built on decades of quiet understanding. I knew when she needed space, when to give advice, and when to simply listen. We laughed over cups of tea on chilly evenings, and I still remembered how she used to curl up on the couch next to me during storms, her small hand clutching mine. Those moments felt precious and timeless. But lately, Something had shifted. It started with small things. Danielle's tone over the phone was more clipped. Her visits home shorter and less frequent. One evening, I noticed she'd removed a photo of us from the hallway, the one from her graduation day, where she was smiling with that sparkle in her eyes. When I asked, she shrugged it off, saying, "I'm just trying to make space for new memories." I nodded, trying not to read too much into it. Maybe wedding stress was getting to her. I reminded myself to be patient. Mothers always do. Then came the wedding planning. Danielle and Christopher's families had been involved in the preparations. And for the most part, things seemed normal. I was invited to fittings, dress rehearsals, and family dinners. I handed over checks with a smile, feeling proud to contribute to a milestone I dreamed of celebrating for years. But sometimes, during those dinners, I'd catch fleeting looks exchanged between Christopher's mother and Danielle, a glance that felt more calculating than warm. Once, when I asked if they needed help with anything else, Christopher's mother gave me a tight smile and said, "We have it all covered, Helen. Your generosity is more than enough." It felt strange, like I was being politely ushered off a stage before the final act. The night before the wedding, Danielle's email landed in my inbox. I remember the sound distinctly, that soft ping echoing through the quiet kitchen as I prepared my evening tea. It was late, and the house was settling into stillness. I sat down, expecting a cheerful message or a last-minute change to the schedule. Instead, I found a carefully worded note. "Mom, please don't come to the wedding. Christopher and I have decided it's best if you watch via livestream. I hope you understand." No explanation. No invitation for discussion. Just that. For a moment, I sat frozen, my hands tightening around the cup until the warmth seeped through my skin, trying to steady me. Why? I asked myself that again and again. Had I done something wrong? Was this punishment? Or something worse, indifference? My mind replayed every conversation, every gesture, searching for clues I'd missed. I could feel the weight of the years, every dollar saved and given, every sacrifice made slipping away in that single line of text. When I finally called Danielle, the line was tense. She avoided my eyes over the phone, her voice hesitant but firm. "Mom, it's complicated. Christopher's family thinks it's better this way." I could hear her trying to justify, to soften the blow. But it was no use. "You're my mother," I said quietly. "Not a guest. You don't get to decide you're not invited." Danielle's response was a mixture of frustration and hurt. "It's just easier this way, Mom. I don't want any drama on my wedding day." That phrase, "any drama," hit me harder than any insult. It made me wonder what stories they'd told Danielle about me, what I was supposed to be in their eyes. A problem to be managed, a distraction to be silenced. After that call, I sat down and thought long and hard. It wasn't just about a wedding invitation. It was about respect, about love that includes and accepts, not controls and excludes. The money I'd given suddenly felt like a shackle rather than a gift, a chain binding me to expectations I never agreed to. So, I did what I had to do. I canceled the remaining $50,000 transfer, not out of spite, but to reclaim my dignity. The reaction was immediate and intense. Danielle's phone calls became a barrage of anger and desperation. "Mom, please don't do this. Christopher's family is furious. They think you're ruining everything." Christopher's mother's voice cut through on one call, cold and sharp. "We were grateful for your support, Helen. This withdrawal is unacceptable." I listened quietly, letting their words wash over me. I was tired of being valued only for what I could provide. Michael came to my side that evening. He had always been my quiet anchor, and his presence was a balm in the storm. "Mom, maybe you could just give them what they want," he said gently. "It's for Danielle's happiness." I looked at him, my son who had watched me give and give until I had little left for myself. "Michael," I said softly, "love isn't supposed to feel like a transaction. And sometimes, you have to choose yourself, even if it hurts." That night, as the house grew still, I found an unexpected peace. I was no longer the woman who sacrificed endlessly without question. I was learning to honor myself, to protect the love I had left. It was the hardest choice I'd ever made, but the most freeing. The morning after I canceled the transfer, the house felt strangely silent. Not the comforting quiet I was used to, but a heavy, expectant stillness, like the calm before a storm. I moved through the rooms with deliberate calm, sipping my coffee slowly, the rich bitterness grounding me in the moment. The sunlight spilled softly through the curtains, casting long shadows across the floorboards. But inside me, a tempest was building. Then the phone rang. It was Danielle. Her voice was sharp, brittle, with fury and disbelief all tangled together. "Mom, you have no idea what you've done. Christopher's family is furious. They don't want anything to do with you now. Do you even realize how much you're ruining everything?" I stayed quiet, listening, Her words were loud, but inside, I felt the stillness of a heart finally waking up. Danielle, I said, steadying my voice. I never wanted to be the person you could buy off. I thought love was enough, but it seems that's not the case. There was silence on the other end, heavy and uncomfortable. The next day, Christopher's mother called me. She was composed but icy, the kind of cold politeness that cuts deeper than anger. We appreciated your financial contributions, Helen. It made the wedding possible, but your withdrawal threatens everything. We expected more cooperation. I could almost picture her, perfectly manicured nails tapping on a polished table, the faint scent of expensive perfume wafting through the phone line. I'm not a bank account, Mrs. Whitmore, I said, feeling a calm clarity I hadn't felt in years. I'm Danielle's mother, and I deserve to be treated as such. She paused, no doubt searching for a sharp retort. None came. The realization hit me then, they never truly wanted me there. They wanted the money, the appearance of a supportive mother-in-law, but not me. And Danielle? Somewhere along the way, she had come to believe that my presence was a problem rather than a blessing. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made the nights I stayed up sewing dresses, the hours I worked extra shifts so Danielle and Michael could have everything they wanted. And now, after all that, I was to be excluded, replaced by a screen and a live stream. Michael was the only family member who understood what was happening. That evening, we sat in the living room, the familiar scent of old books and the soft glow of the lamp wrapping us in a quiet cocoon. Mom, he said softly, it's not easy to stand up like this. But you're right. Love shouldn't come with conditions. His eyes held so much empathy. The kind that comes from someone who's seen your struggles up close but still believes in you. I just don't want to lose Danielle, I confessed, the tremor in my voice betraying my calm facade. You won't lose her, Michael said gently. Sometimes, love means stepping back so they can see you clearly. Then Zoe arrived. She was Danielle's closest friend, and she came bearing truths no one else dared to speak. I had invited her over for tea, hoping to understand what Danielle might be thinking. Sitting across from me, her hands folded tightly in her lap, Zoe's voice was low, almost hesitant. Helen, I'm sorry you're going through this. Danielle didn't mean to hurt you, but Christopher's family has been whispering things, making her doubt you. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of their manipulation. They've made it about the money, haven't they? Zoe looked down. Yes. They saw your generosity as a way to control you or at least keep you quiet. That night, after Zoe left, I sat by the window, watching the stars blink softly against the dark velvet sky. The world felt vast and quiet, full of possibilities I hadn't dared to imagine before. I realized then that I was no longer bound by their expectations or their definitions of love. I could choose peace. The days that followed were not easy. There were awkward family dinners I wasn't invited to, calls that went unanswered, and the sting of absence on days that once meant everything. But I found strength in the quiet moments, a morning walk through the garden, the smell of blooming jasmine, the warmth of sunlight on my face. I rediscovered small joys I had forgotten amid years of sacrifice. I began to rebuild my life on my own terms, no longer defined by what I gave or who I was expected to be, but by the woman I knew myself to be. Deep inside, strong, worthy, and deserving of respect. And in that space, I found something unexpected. Freedom. The day the truth fully revealed itself, I was sitting in my quiet living room, the afternoon sun casting a gentle glow on the lace curtains. My phone buzzed with a new message. But this time, it wasn't from Danielle. It was from Christopher's sister, a woman I barely knew but whose words hit me like a slap. Helen, we appreciate the help you've given, but we feel you've overstepped. This family values unity and respect, and pulling your support threatens that balance. I stared at the screen, a sinking feeling growing in my stomach. Unity and respect? That was rich, coming from people who saw me as a source of funds rather than a mother or a person. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes for a moment. The air smelled faintly of lavender from the sachets I'd placed around the room, a scent I chose to calm my nerves but which now felt like a fragile veil over a deeper hurt. Later that evening, Danielle came over. She stood at my doorstep hesitating, her usual confident smile replaced by something softer, uncertain. I invited her in without a word, pouring us both a cup of tea. We sat in the kitchen, the familiar clink of spoons against china filling the silence between us. Danielle's eyes avoided mine at first, but after a long pause, she spoke. Mom, I didn't want it to come to this. Christopher's family, they didn't want you there, and I was caught in the middle. I looked at her, trying to read the sincerity in her voice. She was younger than I remembered, vulnerable under the weight of expectations not her own. You didn't want me there, I said softly. But you sent the email. You chose their side. Tears welled in her eyes. It wasn't that simple. They said I'd have to choose them or you. I saw then how Danielle had been ensnared, pulled by the promise of approval and the threat of exclusion. And yet, despite her pain, I felt a fracture deep inside. The love I had poured into her had been treated as a transaction, conditional and fragile. I never wanted your wedding to be about money or control, I said, my voice steady but filled with sorrow. I wanted to be part of your life, truly part of it, not just a means to an end. She nodded, wiping away tears. I know, Mom, and I'm sorry, but apologies could not erase months of tension, the subtle ways my presence had been pushed aside. I realized that love, when it demands a price, isn't love at all. In the weeks that followed, the family tensions spilled into public view. Invitations were rescinded. Rumors whispered at family gatherings. Christopher's family's disdain was no secret anymore, but instead of retreating, I held firm. I spoke quietly with close friends, sharing what had happened. Their support was a balm, a reminder that I was not alone, that my dignity mattered. One friend said something that stayed with me. Sometimes the hardest thing is to stand up and say, enough. But when you do, you find yourself. I found strength in that truth. I began to build a life that no longer revolved around others' expectations. I spent more time with Michael, who understood the complex emotions beneath the surface. We shared long conversations over simple meals, the scent of fresh bread and rosemary filling the kitchen, the warmth of candlelight flickering in the evening. He encouraged me to explore new interests, to reconnect with old friends, and to embrace the freedom of setting boundaries. And slowly, I healed. The morning after the heated phone calls and tense messages, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The house was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic outside. I could hear the faint rustle of leaves brushing against the window, and the smell of coffee brewing downstairs drifted up to my bedroom. It was a new day, one I was determined to face on my own terms. I poured myself a cup and sat by the window, the steam curling softly upward. I thought about Danielle's wedding, the money I had given, the love I had poured out without hesitation. For so long, I'd equated sacrifice with love, believing that if I gave enough of myself, my time, my money, it would be enough to hold us together. But love wasn't supposed to come with strings attached. That afternoon, I decided it was time to take action. Not in anger or desperation, but in quiet resolve. I sat down at my computer and logged into my bank account. The remaining $50,000 I had promised to transfer for the wedding was scheduled for the following day. With a steady hand, I canceled the transfer. It wasn't revenge. It was a boundary, an assertion that my love was not a commodity. Later that evening, Danielle called. Her voice was frantic, edged with panic. Mom, please don't do this. Christopher's family is furious. They think you're trying to sabotage the wedding. I listened quietly, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Danielle, I said softly, I'm not trying to sabotage anything. I'm simply choosing to honor myself for the first time in a long while. She cried softly on the other end. But I need you. We all need you. I hear you, I replied, but I won't be treated like a transaction anymore. The days that followed were filled with tension. Christopher's family reached out, their voices polite but laced with clear disappointment. One evening, Christopher's mother called directly. We appreciated your generosity, Helen, but this withdrawal is unacceptable and threatens the unity we were building. I felt a quiet strength rising inside me as I responded. I am Danielle's mother, not a source of endless funds. Respect and love don't come with conditions. There was silence. Michael was my anchor through it all. One night, sitting together over cups of tea, he said, Mom, maybe this is the start of something better. Sometimes love means standing firm, even when it's hard. His words settled deep inside me. I realized then that setting boundaries wasn't just about protecting myself, it was about teaching Danielle and Michael the value of respect, of love that doesn't come with a price tag. Then Zoe came to visit. Her eyes were full of sadness as she sat with me in the living room. Helen, Danielle's been torn apart by all of this. Christopher's family planted seeds of doubt about you, making her question everything. I nodded slowly, feeling the ache of betrayal but also the stirrings of liberation. They saw me as a checkbook, not a mother, I whispered. Zoe reached over and squeezed my hand gently. You deserve better. That night, I sat by the window, watching the stars twinkle quietly in the dark sky. I breathed in the cool night air, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. For the first time, I was choosing myself. The news spread quickly, though I hadn't intended it to. Word of the canceled $50,000 transfer became a quiet scandal among family and friends. Invitations were quietly rescinded. Some of Danielle's acquaintances whispered behind polite smiles. Christopher's family made sure their disappointment was known not through open confrontation, but through subtle exclusions and sharp glances. At first, it stung. The isolation felt like a cold hand closing around my heart. The house, once filled with the warmth of familiar voices and laughter, felt strangely empty. I caught myself hesitating before picking up the phone, unsure if I wanted to face more disappointment. But amidst the silence, I found a strange kind of strength. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store when I ran into Mrs. Martinez, a longtime neighbor and friend. She smiled warmly, her eyes full of understanding. "Helen, I heard about everything. I'm so sorry you're going through this." I nodded, feeling tears prick the corners of my eyes. "Thank you, Maria. It's been hard, but I'm learning to stand up for myself." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "You deserve respect, dear. Never forget that." Back at home, Michael and I had a long talk. We sat at the kitchen table, the scent of freshly baked bread filling the air. He looked at me with quiet admiration. "Mom, this is about more than money, isn't it?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, Michael. It's about being seen and valued for who I am, not just what I provide." He nodded slowly. "I'm proud of you." At the same time, Danielle reached out once more. Her voice was softer now, tinged with regret. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I hurt you." I wanted to tell her that forgiveness would come in time. But right now, I needed space to heal. "I love you, Danielle," I said gently. "But love isn't enough when it's conditional. I need to protect myself now." The community began to see me in a new light, not as the mother who poured out money and love endlessly, but as a woman with boundaries and strength. Conversations shifted. Neighbors who had once whispered behind hands began to reach out, offering support and kindness. Through it all, I held on to dignity. I refused to be drawn into petty arguments or revenge. Instead, I focused on healing. I spent mornings walking in the garden, the soft rustle of leaves underfoot grounding me. The scent of jasmine and freshly turned earth filled my senses. I took up painting again, the brushstrokes a quiet release of emotion. One afternoon, I met with Zoe. She smiled at me, proud and hopeful. "Helen, you've come so far. You're teaching Danielle and Michael what it means to stand firm." Her words were a balm. I realized then that this journey was more than just about a wedding or money. It was about reclaiming myself. Healing came slowly, like a soft dawn breaking over a long, dark night. The days grew warmer, the garden bloomed brighter, and I felt myself blossoming anew alongside it. Each morning, I found solace in small routines. The first sip of tea warming my hands, the quiet creak of the porch swing beneath me, the distant song of birds weaving through the air. For the first time in years, I wasn't defined by sacrifice or expectation. I was simply Helen whole, flawed, and fiercely alive. Michael was my steadfast companion in this new chapter. We cooked dinners together, laughter mixing with the scent of garlic and thyme. Our conversations deepened, no longer clouded by unspoken tensions. He shared his dreams and fears, and I offered support without the weight of guilt or obligation. One evening, after dinner, Michael said quietly, "Mom, you've taught me something important, that love isn't about losing yourself to others." I smiled, feeling the truth of his words settle warmly inside me. Danielle remained a complicated part of my heart. We talked less often now, but when we did, there was a new respect beneath the surface, acknowledgement that our relationship would never be the same, but maybe, in time, it could be something new. I learned that sometimes, love means setting a distance so that healing can begin. The biggest lesson, though, came from within. I realized that boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but bridges that protect the spaces where love can grow freely and safely. I remembered the nights I stayed awake, stitching costumes by the dim light of a lamp, the smell of fabric and thread filling the room. Those sacrifices came from love, yes, but not from a place of loss or pain. They were acts of care, but only when balanced with respect. And so, I chose to live differently, no longer a shadow behind the scenes, bending to the will of others, but as a woman who knew her worth, who demanded kindness and truth. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, volunteering at the local community center, reconnecting with old friends, even taking art classes where the smell of paint and canvas reminded me that creation is a powerful form of healing. I found peace in these quiet moments, the simple joys that don't come with strings or conditions. One afternoon, as I sat painting in the garden, I received a letter from Danielle. She wrote of regret, of confusion, of the love she still held but didn't know how to express. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it away. The door to forgiveness was open, but only on my terms. Looking back, I understand now that love isn't about sacrifice alone. It's about respect, honesty, and the courage to protect your heart. I hope my story reminds you that it's okay to say no. It's okay to walk away from relationships that hurt more than they heal, because in choosing yourself, you find the freedom to truly love without losing yourself in the process. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not easy to share the quiet heartbreak of being pushed aside by the very people you've given your whole heart to. But sometimes, the most important stories are the ones that remind us of our own strength even when love feels like it's breaking us apart. I want to ask you, have you ever felt like your love was taken for granted? Like your presence was overlooked, and only what you could provide mattered? How did you find the courage to set boundaries or walk away? Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect, a way to protect the love you have left for yourself and for those who truly value you. If Helen's story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences and voices matter, and together, we can create a space where healing and strength grow. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and remind us what it means to be human with all our struggles, sorrows, and triumphs. Would you have made the same choice Helen did? I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to love yourself first.